From Boston and beyond, Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Tonight's episode of Conversations with Coach La is brought to you by Virtual Services by Shamina Austin. Do you need to delegate some tasks, or are you looking to declutter a space? Well, assign it to her. Introducing Virtual Services by Shamina Austin. She's currently accepting new clients and offers a variety of back office services depending on your needs. Contact Shamina at 857-273-1528, 857-273-1528, or email shaminaaustin@gmail.com for more information.
Conversations with Coach La.
Coach La, your favorite neighborhood therapist, having real hard convos, contrasting pessimists. Generational trauma explored, broach delicate, getting to the root of the pain, healing impediments. Every week signs copay free lessons. Bet on self, trust the process, no questions. Feel your feels, journey to be healed, no stressing. Conversations with Coach La's now in session.
From Boston and beyond, Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation. And beyond, Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the Urban Heat. Shout out to Coach La.
Coach LA's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the Urban Heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, loud, always get the business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the Urban Heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Coach La 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 La.
What's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La La La, your favorite around the way therapist, live and direct from the Urban Heat Studios right here in Hyde Park, Massachusetts. That's right. Last week, I told you guys that we was Boston. Actually, I said we was the only Black-owned radio station on iHeartRadio, but just a correction. We are the only Black-owned radio station in Boston on iHeartRadio. So just wanted to clarify that for all the people who want to, check me and fact check me and all that good stuff. We are the only one in Boston. It's been a lot going on in your favorite around the way therapist's world, but I made it here today. Shout out to my facilitators of the Selfish Women's Group. Quarterly, I do a group with Vic Breedy and Paula May, who's another psychotherapist, and we provide a space for women to put everything down and to practice self-care and be selfish and unapologetic. So that's what I was doing earlier today. It's been a busy day for me. And then prior to that, I just rested. I rested all weekend. I realized that I just been doing a lot, been doing too much, to the point that I started dropping some balls, y'all. Your favorite around the way therapist definitely had to take a dose of her own medicine and take her own advice and take accountability for doing too much and just stretching myself too thin. So I've been resting and really taking inventory of all of the places and spaces that I am pouring into, and I poured a little bit more into myself over these last couple of days. And the Selfish Women's Group is the group that I need as well. And so shout out to them. Shout out to my Urban Heat family today. They did the R&B trivia And I know that was a full house. So shout out to us as we continue to do amazing events out here in the city. We got another event coming up, tacos and tequila, I believe, is coming up in May. So make sure you are subscribed at the Urban Heat website and that you sign up to keep updated on all our wonderful events. But I know y'all didn't come to just hear about all the wonderful events that's going on in the city. You came to sit on my virtual couch. And as I do every single Sunday, we have a powerful conversation and a dynamic guest to take us on this journey of self-discovery. Now, tonight's conversation is going to be somewhat triggering. So for all of you out there that are triggered by this conversation, I pre-warn you that there's a trigger warning for this because we're going to be talking about some heavy stuff. As you know, this particular series of conversations with Coach La is all about unpacking the past and healing from within. So that means going deep. And sometimes there's some trauma in that past. Sometimes there's some ugly darkness and some stuff that we don't really want to look at, that we've either repressed or suppressed. And so this season is all about unpacking both the personal, the generational, and the systemic issues that we all sometimes face so that we can start to begin to heal from within. This episode is called Beyond the Therapy Chair. So one of the reasons why I started Conversations with Coach La was to do more and to not overexert myself. Some people wonder why it's at 10 o'clock at night, because there's a lot of people with insomnia. There's a lot of people that are up strolling and looking at stuff. So hope they come across Conversations with Coach La and we can give them some food for thought and some nuggets and some inspiration to get through their week. So that's why it's at night. So, you know, healing doesn't just happen in isolation. It happens in community. And believe it or not, even if the community isn't your immediate external surroundings or your family, it might be a support system like a church or a therapist or a group that you may attend. But we do it in community, believe it or not. Even when we don't think we're doing it in community, we're doing it in community. So tonight we are joined by a dynamic voice. I had the opportunity of going and just Googling her. And I went and I looked her up, her catalog. And I was so inspired. I was impressed. Her voice is amazing. It definitely felt like an R&B soul spoken word album, I will tell you that. But she has a voice of empowerment and advocacy. She's a board certified nurse. She's an author. She's a mentor. And she is the creator of what she calls the Mirror Mantras, the ultimate self-empowerment hack. And guess what, baby? It's been streamed over 30 million times across 48 countries. She a bad mama jamma, I'll tell you that. Her mission is deeply rooted in real life transformation. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring her on Conversations with Coach La, because she's also very much about the betting on self mission, right? In terms of what she's telling people to do. She's also the founder, which I told you this was going to get deep, of to End Child Molestation Inc. She also has a new book in a program that she's launching called the Master Self-Talk and Transform Self-Perception. So let me get that right. It's Master Self-Talk and Transform Self-Perception in 30 days. Shnell is the living proof of the most powerful investment you can ever make in yourself is yourself. Okay? So let's welcome Shnell Swain to Conversations with Coach La with her fine self. She's such a beautiful spirit. What's up, my sister?
Thank you. Yeah.
What is going on?
Oh, I am so excited to be here with you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction and all the beautiful things you said about me. And I want to reflect that love back to you because I definitely admire you in the same way. And I give thanks to you.
You might have to turn your volume down on either your laptop or something because we get a little bit of an echo.
Okay. How is that?
The sound up. Just turn your sound down. I also turned mine down a little bit too. Usually, people is not that loud, but you got great volume over there. Loud and clear.
Okay.
So now, what is it that you want the people to know that's not a part of this bio? I always ask people, who is Shnell? Because you have a powerful testimony and story that didn't just start today. So who are you?
That's a beautiful question. I would describe myself as someone who is a servant, who is serious, but also funny, who
Uh-huh.
loves to laugh. I love people. I love serving. I love sharing. And I would also say that I am someone who has been refined by adversity. So if I had to describe myself, I would say, all of those things. And that, again, I'm a bit silly. I'm a silly person, but yet I'm serious.
Yes.
So, I love hard, I laugh hard, I play hard, and I work hard.
Yes. I would have to agree. The privilege and the honor of coming to know who you are from social media. I know social media can get a bad rap, right? But for me, I've met some of the most dynamic people in that space. It's been an awesome place to network and connect with people. Everybody that's on social media ain't fake, right? Everybody who's posting is not posting from a non-authentic place. And I really appreciate it. You are consistent through all platforms. And I've loved that. So who I met online is who I met when I finally got a chance to meet you face to face at Therapy at the Poetic Scape on the Cape. Was the first time we actually physically met, because we only had text, email, or seen each other online. So I love stories like that. We don't hear enough of those type of authentic stories from social media. We only hear usually about the catfishing and the people not being who they say they are. But there's a lot of us that really do show up both online and in person the same way. So I want to really thank you for that, because we are already changing the narrative and breaking the stigma of what people think. And that's the only way we can really change in community, because that's what this conversation is all about, is how do we make our community better, right? And I think part of it is we be the change that we want to see, right? So questioning social media, then how can you show up more authentically on social media? So thank you for being that for me, and validating and affirming that for me. Now,
thank you.
One of the things that I noticed is your journey from trauma to transformation, right? And I came across an interview you did when you were in Atlanta on a Christian. It was almost 13 years ago that you got interviewed about what happened to you as a child. And then I also saw you speak about it and how you changed that day as a young lady who decided to tell when a lot of children don't tell.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that journey for you, of that little girl? Because I do a lot of inner child work. And I saw that, I said, her little girl and her is so proud of her.
She is.
So proud of her.
She is.
Like standing up then and doing what you're doing now to help other young people is just amazing. So tell us about that, in terms of okay, you were this little girl who got molested, who told, to now being this grown woman who started a whole organization to end molestation. Talk to us about that journey from trauma to transformation.
Yeah, well, for me, I did tell, and, I'll share a little bit about my story. So I did tell about the person who attempted, who abused me, and I was not believed. I was not believed. And what I've learned over the years through my advocacy work is that is common, that a lot of children tell and are not believed, and so for me, what that did, of course, as you can imagine, any child that first gets the courage to even tell, because oftentimes the abuser is not some stranger. Yes. Though we are aware that stranger danger happens, over 90% of the time is someone that's in the child's social circle. So oftentimes it's someone the child knows, loves, and trusts. And that was the case for me. So first of all, to even get the courage to tell was, a big deal. and then to tell and not be believed was, for me, in my experience, equally heartbreaking. It was equally damaging, because here I was sharing this with people who I felt should have been protecting me, and they basically did not believe it. And I would even say that in retrospect, when I look back on that time, I don't even think it was that they didn't believe me. It was is more denial and avoidance. They just didn't want to address the issue for
Correct.
whatever reason. I can't speak for them. And so what that did for me was it really damaged my identity in my younger years. It damaged the way I saw myself. And for years, I didn't recognize it as that until I got into a reflective posture at a certain season of my life, where I started to examine my decision making and with regard to relationships and why I would be attracting certain types of people. And so for me, to answer your question, it definitely sparked transformation for me. But, in my younger years, I would definitely say it altered the way I saw myself. Mm-hmm. It changed the way I saw myself, and it damaged my self-perception and self-esteem. So I saw myself as reduced by what happened to me, which is a lie,
Yes.
which should have never happened. But when you're a child, you don't understand that. And so for me, I would definitely say that experience was the catalyst for me being the advocate that I am today, the wellness person that I am today. And really, I understand now that was something that happened to me. It's not my entire story. That was a chapter in my story. It wasn't my entire, that's it,
It's the final
And so, absolutely, it was a contributing factor, not the determining factor. Mm-hmm. And so I understand that. And so that is when I encounter people, because I do often, who have had similar experiences, I always tell them that to understand that we can never control other people's behavior, decisions, right? But when they do something to us that is unfair, undesirable, unwanted, unwarranted, all of that, then we don't have to wear the label as damaged goods, that it was something that happened to us, but it does not define the rest of our lives. It does not have to. And so that is something that I am big on talking with people about, because I often, encounter people, because of the work that I do, I encounter people almost on a daily basis who have been abused. I've been an advocate for ending child sexual abuse for a long time, probably 15, 16, 17 years, So this is something that is needed. And what I've learned over the years is that it's common. Unfortunately, it's so common.
Yeah.
I know more people who have been sexually abused than who have not been. And that's disturbing.
It is. So true. So true. I'm still hearing that my voice back. So you might have the volume up on your side. It's almost like when you call a radio station.
Yes.
They tell you to turn your volume down. Remember back in the day, you would call in and want to,
Yes.
and be like, turn your radio down, sis. And so that's what you got to do on your end. So
how is it now? Is it still?
It sounds like it's getting better. Yes.
Okay.
It sounds much better now. So,
Okay.
One of the things that we talked about last episode, because we've been talking about these generational cycles and how this trauma is passed down, and the patterns of behavior, beliefs, and experiences. And you mentioned denial, right? And not wanting to address it, which I think is very common. Often is that, to accept that truth means like, okay, now what do we do? And it's almost like you want to turn a blind eye or act as though it didn't happen. How has that you mentioned that it made you question who you were in terms of identity and self-esteem. What was the marker that made you shift that thought process and begin to do the mirror mantras? Because you now are constantly giving powerful affirmations to not just yourself, but to others. So when did that shift that, you know what, I'm not what I went through, and the self-esteem and everything switched to this powerful being that's speaking up and telling other people that they're awesome and that they can do great things?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you, for me, when I started my personal transformation journey started before this incident, but this was a pivotal moment for me with regards to mirror mantras and actually speaking life to myself in the mirror. And I'm going to say this, I discovered mirror work by someone called Louise Hay. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her as an author. So I was familiar with her work and familiar with that concept. But there was a particular moment in my life which really kind of thrust me into this space where, like, a light bulb moment went off, and I was like, you know what? This is powerful work to really lock in with yourself. And if you have an opportunity, I'm not sure if you've ever done it, but please try this exercise, because I'm telling you, it's something that we take for granted. We pass a mirror every day, we getting dressed, we put our makeup on, whatever, doing our hair, brush our teeth, whatever. But how many times do we ever really sit with ourselves long enough to lock in with ourselves, lock eyes with yourself, and really be present with yourself? And so for me, that moment happened when I was in a hospital bed. I found myself, when I was having my youngest son, I was having problems with him. And I found myself in a hospital for 9 weeks. And during that time, I was on strict bed rest, meaning I could not even get up and go to the bathroom. They had to come with a bedpan. So it was real serious bed rest. Okay. Yeah. But that moment in that season of my life changed so much, because I was free from distractions. I was placed in the position where I was still. I was forced to be still. And the only thing I could do was look at myself in the mirror, write. I used to write all the time. That's where I wrote those mirror mantras from that hospital bed. So I began writing to myself, and it was in that moment, really, in that season, during that time, that I began to reflect over my life and to really examine my life choices, to really examine the decisions I was making and why I was making those decisions. And so I really believe the reason why I talk so much about reflection in terms of not just looking at yourself in the mirror, but also reflecting back over your life, over things, because reflection turns experience into insight. And so for me, when I was in that space, it offered me an opportunity to really tap in with Shnell, to really learn who I was, without makeup, without a wig, without all of those things, but the real me, to really tap into me and be real with myself about some of the poor decisions I was making and why I was making those decisions. And so in that space, I had to ask myself some very hard questions. And I had to be real with myself about the answers. And it was there that I really learned the power of our words and the power of our internal dialogue, and how sometimes the words other people say to us, or the damaging things other people have done to us, we will rehearse in our mind, and it becomes our inner voice.
That's right.
And how that can affect our decision making. And so for me, that's what that season did. And it transformed me in a way that it really, that revelation, I would say, produced a revolution, if you will. You know, as Gil Scott-Heron says, the revolution would not be televised. No, because the real revolution that happens, the most important one happens in your mind.
That is so true. Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it was for me. So that is the pivotal point in my life where transformation really happened on a higher level, on a deeper level. And so again, I remember one day so clearly, I was looking at myself in the mirror and it was just like hard to look at myself. It was hard to do that. And I locked in with myself, and I really connected with myself in a way I had never done before. And I began to speak life to myself. First of all, I was dealing with something called preeclampsia. So for those who are not familiar, it's a high blood pressure issue that typically, once you reach a certain level and it turns into something else called HELP, which affects your liver and your major organs, it can shut your body down. It's a
Correct.
very,
and it happens a lot for people that are pregnant.
Absolutely. It happens for people who are pregnant. So for me, that's what I was dealing with at that time. And it was at a dangerous level. It was, the doctors actually described my case as grim and said that I had about they only seen about 1 or 2 people live in that situation. And so for me, I was really in a space where I had to be calm. I had to calm my body, calm my mind, and get really focused and still. When you're fighting for your life, you don't have time for foolishness. You don't have time to be thinking about foolishness. And that will really, make you check in with yourself and do some self-examination. And so again, I'm actually thankful and grateful for that season of my life because it forced me to take some real serious inventory. But that, to answer your question, was a pivotal moment for me because again, to even distract myself from my health issues, I began writing. That's all I did for those 9 weeks was write, examine myself, work on myself, and invest in myself in terms of everything that I was listening to because I had a laptop was all about self-improvement, transformation. And so I did a lot. I really took inventory of the things that I needed to do, but that is the pivotal moment. And it's from that hospital bed that I still have that notebook that I wrote all those mantras in and still have that notebook. But that was the pivotal moment for me that began transformation on a deeper level for me. And it changed everything. For me, it changed my life.
Yeah. It's interesting that so many people have a story of healing that's connected to something like that, where they were sick, fell down on their luck. Some people call that your rock bottom story. And that rock bottom story is usually where you come up out of the ashes like the phoenix, you know what I mean? And so it's so interesting because so many people have that narrative. And I think that, if you also are a spiritual person and they talk about being in the valley or they talk about Daniel in the lion's den, like you have these stories where you almost had to go through that to be able to come out the version you are today. Sometimes every fire is not meant to burn us, but it actually shapes us into the most beautiful pieces of glass or steel that you've ever wanted to see because it takes fire or, the idea of pressure making diamonds. So sometimes we don't realize that we got to go through some things to get to the other side. So what beautiful work has come out of this trauma, right? These mirror mantras, that 35 million streams. It's super dope. You guys got to go and check it out. I found it on Apple Music. I'm sure it's on Spotify too, but I was able to just type in Shnell Swain and it all popped up. And you have been a busy bee. Okay, my sister, you have a lot of work that you've done over these years. So I would say you have a lot to be proud of in terms of how you've stepped into this and taken what I would like to say, all of this and made it a bet on self moment, a bet on self season, and really just help people. So at what point did you realize, my story's going to help someone else, in that it became you creating community? When did that hit you? Because right now it's sort of like this is very individualized, right? Like I'm just trying to get myself out of this situation. But when did it say, you know what, other people need to hear this story, because you know what, maybe I can help somebody else by sharing?
You know, as God would have it, there's always someone who who confirms, in a sense, that is needed. So for me, I've always had someone along my journey who, in some capacity, I was mentoring. And I believe that's because, likewise, I've always had someone who on my journey was mentoring me. Mm-hmm. So I've always had someone, and I don't take that lightly. I don't take that level of responsibility lightly, that someone trusts you enough to come to you to ask you for information. So for me, I've always, in some capacity, whether it's a relative or a friend of a friend, I've had people who I've had, even recently, I used to, like back in the days, I had a few girlfriends that I hung out with, and we were very close. And over the years, I've had their children reach out to me to ask me for advice and support in certain areas. I take that as a huge compliment. You know, I take that as a huge compliment that they know me and they trust me and they come to me for guidance and support. So I can't say there was ever like one incident, but there's been a pattern, you know, of that through my life. And again, I've also been blessed to have people who've poured into me in that way. So it's always made me feel a level of responsibility, because I understood the importance of that. You know, the importance of mentorship is important. And for me, the things that I've learned late, I try to give to other people early, you know, so that
they say it's the blueprint, you know, when the student shows up, the teacher will appear.
Yes.
Right. So if you want to know something or you want to learn something, you find someone who's done it or is doing it the way you want it done, and you ask them how they did it. And then you need to actually repeat it, right? You need to actually listen and apply and execute on what they tell you. So I think the exchange of information is so important. The unfortunate piece is, like you said, this is so common that people have either been, you know, sexually assaulted, abused as a child, and it's always someone, you know, and it takes your voice. It makes you not trust yourself and not trust others. So sometimes it gets a little bit challenging to navigate the world and to be able to make good decisions for yourself. So I commend you, you know, because that's everybody's testimony is a little different, and not everybody gets on the other side with writing a book and doing mantras. Some people end up, you know, with addiction issues and actually perpetuate the same behavior onto someone else. What do you think really, you know, made you be different, to make a different choice and to come out of that? Because just because you got sick and got in the hospital doesn't always make someone stop and do that type of deep reflection. Sometimes people get angry, resentful, apathetic, and they go a different route. What do you think was different for you that made you choose a different path?
Like I said, I believe, because I wasn't at that level with it until I had that, you know, episode and that experience in the hospital. But I was always somewhat on that side. You know, it just wasn't as deep in terms of, I love life. I've never felt like, I'm blessed. And to answer your question, I don't think I could point to one thing that made me not adopt the victim mentality. I just understood, again, and in part it's probably because of the great people that I did have in my life, the great mentors that I did have in my life, and the great, although they were not family members or, you know,
Yes, because that's
relevant.
what I'm trying to get to. I'm trying to get yes, because somebody else came in because it's about community, right? So
Right.
if your family didn't believe you, this little girl had bravery way beforehand to tell.
Absolutely.
No one believed you, and you had to kind of like suppress it and keep going.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
then these other individuals around you sort of help you see that, you know what, that wasn't supposed to happen to you,
Absolutely.
right?
And so if I have to give credit to anything, I wouldn't say anything, what makes me different in terms of resiliency. I would have to credit just having God strategically placing people along my path in different seasons of my life that poured into me and that supported me and that helped me see myself in a different way, to help me not see myself as damaged goods, to help me understand that I was not what happened to me, so that I was able to separate myself from that identity in terms of feeling like I was damaged goods, and then rehearsing that over and over and over in my mind to the point where I want to escape. Because typically, when people do turn to abusing alcohol, abusing drugs, or what have you, it's a form of escape most of the time. So for me, if there's anything that I would credit with, me being resilient in that regard, I would have to say it's because of being blessed to have people who poured into me in different seasons along my journey that helped me see myself the proper way, that always saw me for who I was and not through the lens of my pain.
Right.
Right.
I wrote this a while back as an affirmation. And, feel free, those that are out there listening, to repeat after me, but it's kind of grounded in what we're talking about. And this is how it went. Today, I vow to be a cycle breaker in my family. The buck stops with me, and the healing in my family starts with me. I am open and willing to see myself, learn myself, and accept myself beyond what I have been taught to know about me.
Yes.
And I think, when I wrote that, probably 5 o'clock in the morning, because I get these these wonderful thoughts. They say that
Yes.
this time that God speaks to you. I
Mm-hmm.
thought about what it takes to move past what you've been told about yourself, to move past what society tries to perpetuate onto you about who you are. And in those moments where we've all been taught that family, your mother, your father, your aunties, your uncles, those are supposed to be the people who keep you safe and guide you. So when they don't do that, you often feel lost. Or if they say things about you, about what you're going to become, it hits and it sticks with you. You mentioned earlier about having that narrative in your head where you play it back. And I often ask my clients, whose voice are you listening to? Whose voice is that? Where did that voice come from that's calling you stupid, telling you you're dumb, or telling you you're not beautiful, you're not good enough? Whose voice is that? Where did that voice come from? Because as little kids, right, you think about little kids that come in the world, they don't automatically start thinking.
Right.
And this is where those generational cycles and where us as a society have to really realize how we're influencing little kids, and what messaging we're giving them, because it gets embedded and they play that out like record players in their head. And that
Absolutely.
also shapes who they see themselves as adults as well. So again, we become part of the community that now helps people to see themselves differently, and we keep passing it forward, again, being the change we want to see in the world. So I think that's amazing and super dope. Now, talk to me about your mantra. Okay. Or your model. I call it a mod. She calls it a model, but it's a mantra. It's a framework. See
It's
it,
both. It's all of that.
like see it, decree it, be it, which is what the name of the piece, the spoken word piece, the affirmation R&B album. I got a lot of names for it because it definitely felt like an R&B album, because there was a little singing and rhythm going on in this piece. So tell me the story behind this.
Okay, well, that is, it's all of that. It's the motto. It's my motto for life. It's the framework that I teach this in my book. And when I go into spaces, that's the framework that I use. And I'm going to explain what that means. See it, decree it, be it. It's just like this. See it first, to visualize the empowered version of yourself, to envision that. Because it all starts in your mind first. You see it first in your mind, and then you see it in reality, right? So see it, that's the see it part. Then decree it. Once you see it, once you have a vision in your mind of the empowered version of yourself, you have to speak life to that. You have to speak words that affirm that. You have to speak it, and then you have to be it. You have to embody that person. You have to, even before you become that person, you got to walk, talk, act, be that person that you envision in your mind. And really, that's the framework that I created in that bed. Is I learned the power of all three of those things in that bed. And that is the model that I live every day of my life. Mm-hmm. See it, decree it, be it. And the words in that piece that you're talking about is basically breaking that down, is close your eyes and imagine who you want to be. When you close your eyes and imagine who you want to be, hold on to the picture that you see in your mind. And so that is exactly what that's about.
I think that's dope. I think, at the end of the day, we're talking about manifestation. But for the listeners out there, again, I know you guys are tuned in from multiple places. So shout out to Instagram, because y'all are fired up and y'all are in the chat. Shout out to Facebook and LinkedIn. Shout out to Diane Vivian. Thank you, sis, for tuning in. And everybody on iHeartRadio, thank you for tuning in every week to Conversations with Coach La right here on the Urban Heat on iHeartRadio. I am Coach La, your favorite around the way therapist, talking to Shnell Swain, spoken word author, mother, sister, friend, beautiful. She's all that in the bag.
Thank you.
And a teeny juice for those of y'all that old school. Y'all know about the teeny juice and the penny candy. You know what I mean?
You know it.
It's just, it's refreshing to hear this. But for those that are listening, that are really struggling with seeing it, what advice, what are some steps? Because sometimes you can't get beyond those automatic thoughts, right? Of, yes, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I don't have the degrees. I don't have the body. I don't have this. I don't have that, all of these things. I don't have the kids, the husband. I don't have the job. I just don't have any of those things. So how am I supposed to see what I want to become or what I want to be when right now my current reality seems so glim? What advice do you have for somebody like that?
I would say invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. Because that's why so many people go on to transform their lives, because maybe they didn't start out knowing, but it's in a book somewhere. Somebody has gone through what you are going through now and come out on the other side. Someone has learned the tools that you need. And so I would suggest investing in yourself, investing in the transformation. Again, like you said earlier, the best investment you'll ever make in your life is the investment you make in yourself. Mm-hmm. And so transformation is not a one-step thing. It's a process. It's a process. It does not happen instantaneous, but you're worth it. And if you are in a space where you don't have a vision for your life, because that's what it comes down to, is having a vision for your life. And if you are in a space where you don't have a vision for your life, that's why I created this resource for you, the Master Self-Talk book, because I really, and I'm not saying that to just plug the book, and even if it's not from someone getting my book, I would really strongly advise you to invest in yourself, because you need to learn from, like you said earlier, from people who've gone through that. A lot of what I talk about in my book and teach in my book, I didn't learn that in nursing school. I didn't learn it in a course in a building. I learned it on the course of life, you know? So a lot of times when you're in a space where you are trying to elevate your life and you're trying to transform your life, it's going to require you to do some work, some real work. You know, it's nice to say affirmations and look in the mirror and do all that. Like that's a piece of it, but it's really going to require you to do the work. You know,
Let's talk about that.
Yes.
Let's talk about the work. Because I think that's one of the things that people don't really take heed to in therapy. Like, it's not me sitting psychoanalyzing you and just, telling you what to do, or they back in the days, well, some people still do. They call us shrinks, right? They call us shrinks. Like, we're going to come in and shrink your brain or something. But the work really is what you bring, right? What you bring, it's your inner thoughts. It's being honest with yourself. I always tell people it's not about you coming and being honest with me. If you leave this session and you can have self-reflection and be honest with yourself about what you really think and what you really say to yourself, even if you can't tell me, can you actually acknowledge what you talk about and what you think about when you're up at night, when your anxiety hits, when you're feeling depressed? Like, what do you really think? What do you really say to yourself? What memories are popping up that you just are too afraid to even articulate to anyone, because that's going to make it real? That's the work, right? When people don't realize, those somatic feelings when you get around a certain person or in certain spaces and you feel it in your body and you get a headache or you feel nervous, anxious, or like you gassy, you want to throw up. Do you sit back and ask yourself, what is it about this space or this individual that has me uncomfortable? Sometimes it's not that person. It's what that person is doing or saying that reminds you of something else.
Right. That has triggered that response in you. Right.
Those unresolved traumatic responses. So the work often is the mirror.
Absolutely.
And often that shows up in our relationships when we get married or we have kids. Those people become mirrors to that stuff that you haven't dealt with, right? When you point out something in someone else that you don't like, sometimes that's because you've seen it before. It's something you struggle with. And so you can quickly identify it in another person because it's actually something that has to do with you.
Absolutely.
So it's just interesting, right? The work. Because I think a lot of times we use these words, Shnell, right? We throw this out here, sit in the discomfort, practice self-care, practice grace, self-compassion, self-esteem. But a lot of people don't know what the heck that means. And when you ask them, well, what does that mean and what does that look like? They're dumbfounded and they're stuck. They don't even have a good answer.
Right. It means do the work, because that's a part of caring for yourself, is doing the work. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've heard people even say, like, self-care and self-love is like a flu. Well, it depends on your definition of that word, because if you're looking at self-love as spa days and days on the beach, not to say that that's incorrect, it's incomplete though. It's not the full picture. It's maintenance. It's a self-care, but self-love there's levels to it. And the foundation of self-love is your identity, is knowing who you are and having a strong identity and really liking and loving yourself, because you have to like yourself first. Liking and loving yourself. And so we need the foundational principles in place to really, because self-love is made up of a lot of things: self-compassion, acceptance, which is self-forgiveness. It embodies all of these things. And so it's not one thing, it's layered, it's multi-layered. But you're right. The biggest thing, if you are in a space struggling right now and you have no vision for your life, then I strongly suggest you do the work on yourself.
And start there. I think that's the start. The start is challenging yourself to sit still.
Yes.
And really think about what you need, what you want.
Yes.
And your non-negotiables.
Absolutely.
Right? Because non-negotiables fall into the boundaries. It falls into, what you stand for, what you'll go for,
standards.
what you won't go for, your standards,
Absolutely.
your values, your beliefs, right? What you want, oftentimes can be unrealistic, right? It might not be something, it could be something you might be able to live without, right? And then those things that you really need. And, I have so many clients that go, I don't even know what I like anymore, right? I feel like I've lost myself. I feel like, I got married and I had kids and I don't know who I am anymore. And I always challenge people, when we say we want these things, why do we want them? Right? Why do we want them? And what do we think we're going to bring to those things? And what do we think those things are going to bring to us if we obtain them? And a lot of times that's another place people don't really take enough time to think about, because so much of these wants are society's standards, and they've been perpetuated on us, or your family has told you that this is what you're supposed to want and this is what you're supposed to do. And you haven't really sat with any of this to really think about, well, why do I want it? And if I got that, what does that mean? And what am I going to bring to that? And what is that going to require of me if I attain that? So
identity crisis, not knowing who they are. And that's why it's important to do the work, like you said, and really, once you are in a space where you can, where you're willing to be brutally honest with yourself, like you said, and that's why I said that earlier. For me, when I was in that space, I had to be brutally honest with myself. That's required with doing the work. If you're going to show up for yourself and you want transformation in your life, you're going to have to be brutally honest with yourself, with the questions that are asked and your answers.
Yes, and be able to accept feedback from people that you actually respect.
Yes.
Being able to be in a place to sit with being told about yourself, and not in a way that's bringing you down, but in a way that's going to make you grow. I always say, when someone gives you feedback or tells you something about yourself, is there any truth to it?
Yes.
And is any part of it going to help me grow if I listen? So if I take away the messenger, I take away who's bringing it to me, the time and the place, the tone, and just everything that goes along with. Because often that's what we'll say. Well, they didn't tell me in the right tone, and they didn't tell me with the right facial expression, and they didn't tell me at the right time. And who are they to tell me? Okay, all said, very true. But is any of what they're saying true? Have you heard it before from anyone else? Have you said it to yourself? And is what they're telling you going to help you grow in any shape, fashion, or form? If so, take a deep breath. And before you have a rebuttal, before you get defensive, say, you know what? Thank you for your feedback, and I'll take that into consideration and let it be. Right? Don't even go back and forth. Because often
that's a blessing.
And get argumentative over something, and you can miss the whole thing, and that person may not ever tell you anything again.
Right. And I love when someone feels as though they can tell me something about myself. I do. Even if I don't agree with it, I'm going to consider it. I'm going to listen to it. And I'll tell you, I've been blessed to say this, because I've had some mentors in my life who are still actually two people I'm thinking of in particular right now, who have shared things about me that I didn't see. When you have people, that's why it's important to have a coach or a mentor type of person in your life whose judgment you trust, who they're saying something to you out of love. That they can, who you trust, so that when they tell you something about yourself, you're not looking at it as a critique. You're looking at it like, okay, this person wants the best for me. They want to see me show up as my best. So they actually are looking at my blind spots. And that's how you have to view it when you have people who can be honest with you about you. Thank God. I give thanks for those who are in my life and who've been in my life, who've checked me in certain areas and who've been able to tap me and show me my blind spots. Like, that's a blessing to have people who care enough about you to want you to show up as your best.
Yes. And speaking of that, I can't believe we got like 8 minutes left to the show.
Oh no.
You guys have been listening to Conversations with Coach La La La, your favorite around the way therapist. I got my sister, girl, my powerful coach, mentor, author, spoken word artist, Miss Shnell Swain in the building with me tonight, sitting on the virtual couch. And we've been talking about healing, right? And going beyond the therapy chair, because often we don't want to do this work in isolation, but we do want to do the work. Now, studies show that people who engage in community healing or group therapy are 30% more likely to maintain emotional well-being than those who isolate in individual recovery. So me and Shnell do a lot of group work, right? We do a lot of going out and doing presentations and workshops. And even if when you engage with any of her material, it's really about being able to see yourself, but that as you see yourself, you also go into spaces more confident, and you have the ability to do this community and be in community when you feel good about who you are. So this is very much a iron sharpen iron type of conversation. So my favorite segment is the bet on self. I like to get people to talk a little bit, which you've already shared so much about your bet on self moments, but is there any other moments that we haven't touched on where you had these defining decisions that you chose healing, growth, and change, even when it was uncomfortable? And maybe if you are looking at some things that are coming up for you that you have to challenge yourself once again to step out of a comfort zone, talk to us about it.
I love the name. I love that bet on self, because that's the motto too. That's it. Let me tell you, every single day that I wake up, I'm betting on myself. And not only am I betting on myself, I'm going all in, for those who like to play poker like I do. I'm going all in on myself. Listen, we have one life, and I'm leaving here with something, like Denzel say. Okay, I'm
taking something.
Listen, I'm going all in. I'm betting on myself every single day. Every single day that I wake up, I'm betting on myself. Mm-hmm. And that's never going to change. And I think the moment you stop betting on yourself, the moment you stop feeling like you're worthy of that investment, get into a community like this, because that is why community is important. Because when we're by ourselves, when in isolation, that's why being in isolation is so dangerous. That's why when people are in prison, the most harsh punishment they can get is solitary confinement, is to be isolated from people. Because when you're isolated and alone, the only person you have to connect with is yourself. Now, there's a time and a space for that when you need to connect with yourself, but to thrive, you need to be in community. Community is very important. And so if you find yourself in a space where you are isolated, tap in with Coach La. This is a beautiful thing that she's doing for the community, to be able to connect with people, to be able to pull yourself up from that dark place. And again, like you said in the song, the See It, to Create, Be It song. And I just want to say just a little bit of that for anybody who may be struggling. Close your eyes and imagine where you want to be. Paint a picture in your mind and hold on to what you see. I'm talking vision in your mind, not with your eyes. This controls more than you even realize. You see, how you see yourself dictates every choice. It dictates your speech. It controls the voice, the one that's in your head, filling it up with doubt, or love and powerful mantras if that's what you're about. But either way, just be aware, because your real identity lives here. I just wanted to share that with y'all.
Let me tell you something. Nothing but inspiration is shared on Conversations with Coach La. We are Black radio, and we have the ability, by being Black radio, to really decide how to heal our community through these airwaves, right? And this is antibiotics.
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of people going through a lot of things out there. And you guys know I started this new thing, which is the Coach's Reflection, right? Coach's Corner. which at the end, of the show where I just kind of reflect. And so here's tonight's Coach's Corner. Healing is more than just sitting across from someone in a chair. It's how we show up for ourselves when no one is watching. It's how we hold each other accountable in love. And it's how we come back to the truth of who we are, even when the world tries to rewrite us. This week, I invite you to reflect on your bet on self moment. Was it when you finally said no and meant it? And I want you to think about how you can continue to believe, empower, and transform everything you do. And sometimes that starts with just sitting and looking in the mirror, just like Shnell just shared with us, is taking that moment to sit and reflect, look in the mirror, and ask yourself, same question I asked Shnell, who am I? Who am I? What do I see? Who do I want to be? Right? See it, decree it, be it, right?
Be it.
If you don't actually take time every day doing that, at least once a week doing that, sometimes you can get so lost in what everybody else is telling you to do, who they're telling you are. And sometimes people will throw back your past, even when you're moving so beyond your past. Your past will come back and knock on your door just when you least expect it if you don't deal with it. So it's sometimes good to go back and look and realize how much you've grown and how far you've come, and not let your past be something you hide from, but something that lifts you up and propels you forward. Any last other words you got, Shnell? We got like 30 seconds.
Well, I'm going to have to come back because I definitely have to get you a copy of this book, because everything that we talked about is in this book. There's a section in this book, an exercise in the book that actually asks the question, who am I?
Yes.
And it's a 2-day exercise. It's a powerful exercise. So I'm going to have to come back on here and talk with you about the book.
I hope you will.
After I give you a copy, because I want you to have a copy of the book, of course. And there are 2 stickers that come with the book. I want to show you this. It's so cool. 2 stickers. One is a sticker that you put on your mirror, and the other one turns your book into an actual mirror.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yes.
All right, y'all. Thank you, Miss Shnell. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.
Of Conversations with Coach La. That wraps it up. Make sure y'all keep on betting on self. See you next week. We got another great guest. Stay tuned and follow my Instagram page, conversations_ with Coach LA on Instagram, to hear who the next guest is. Have a good night, everybody.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach La.
Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just call it. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. Conversations with Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call him, you can hit a line.